the tragedy of progressivism and, advocating for the new is that it criticizes what is tradition and old without even being able to first articulate and understand it. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a bit of a different clip to show you guys here. I was looking at my Transformers, getting caught up a little bit on certain events in the new Skybound series, and I just couldn't help to just look at this video, and I was like, what? Like, what is all this propaganda? And not that propaganda is bad in and of itself, but it's like a particular type of propaganda. And it got me thinking, as a Christian, I think people think this way a little bit about Jesus and what he brought, and I'm like, yeah, they don't understand what the essence of what he did. So with that being said, let's look at this and let's talk about it. Apply some scripture.
In Skybound Transformers issue 28, on the Autobot side, the story shifts into something far more introspective. Optimus Prime is no longer portrayed as an unshakable pillar. He questions tradition, questions authority, and most importantly, questions himself.
So right out the gate, they make it seem like this step in Optimus Prime's articulated story in this comic book is really good and necessary for his growth or something like that. And my thought is, wait, Optimus Prime is doing what now? Why would he do that? He's he should know that these things are foundational because he's got the wisdom of the primes. Like, what's going on? He knows the reality and the essence. He's not just a hierarchical person. No, the reason we trust him is because he carries the pure essence of the Transformers with him. And I'm like, okay. Let's see where this video goes.
His decision to agree and let Ultra Magnus give up his mantle is not framed as weakness, but as responsibility, an acknowledgement that the old structures may no longer be enough to survive what lies ahead. This decision directly leads to one of the most significant developments in the Skybound era, Arcee's transformation into Arcee Magnus. This moment is not simply a promotion or a visual upgrade, it is a thematic statement. Skybound is redefining what leadership means in the Transformers mythos. Arcee Magnus does not represent...
Well, first things first, before we goes into that, fire design. Personally, I don't understand how the Transformers could do this, especially given I thought the whole Skybound thing was they're kind of like they don't have much energon. They can't be making these these radical moves without in other established communities continuities. They had like the little Transformer MacGuffins, those things that could turn the tide, but that does not exist in Skybound. So I have no idea. Somebody in the comments tell me how she could just casually beef herself up and why only she could do it and why can't the other Autobots do it. Because I'm like, oh, you just last I saw you, Optimus, I was first 6 issues or something like that, and I'm seeing you with a Megatron arm because stuff out here is just that bad. But personal criticisms aside on the whole on where the Transformers are at right now, I thought the whole point was that that it's kind of do or die. And so I know about Ultra Magnus being a sort of title, but I'm like, okay, so wait, why is these decisions framed in this way as a positive? This seems to be a tragedy, like a walking tragedy, where it's this person is so broken he can't be put back together. Like, Ultra Magnus, you all right, big dog? What's going on? You just want to give up? And so I'm like, what in the world is this attack on what is established? Why is everything that was traditional seemingly a bad thing?
Inherited authority or symbolic legacy. She represents endurance, moral burden, and the willingness to carry the cost of war on a personal level. Her rise contrasts sharply with Megatron's descent. Where Megatron sheds restraint and empathy, Arcee takes on responsibility and restraint as an act of strength. This duality forms the emotional backbone of the issue. Power can either consume or protect. In Skybound,
and so even just to juxtapose with Megatron, for me, I'm like, okay, is that where Ultra Magnus' story kind of ends? But all that aside, let's talk about it. So I just don't get it. Honestly, I didn't know that the Transformers could just casually do this in this continuity, but on top of that, I don't understand why leadership is framed this way, as giving up power instead of enduring the battle so that those weaker than you can survive is looked at as a good thing. And as I said in the beginning, like when it comes to what is established, I don't understand why the modern era has this sort of perspective that everything from the past seems to be just wrong and that it cannot be right, and that, it's just like, oh, we have to tear it all down. No, that's not how Jesus taught us. You see, I chose a few key verses just to show how this plays out in the New Testament, because obviously the New Testament is very controversial to some, but to us it's very beautiful in the way it marries the old perspective with what is coming. Obviously, Messiah was prophesied in the Old Testament, and thus he's supposed to bring a particular brand of change. But I think Jesus' words here demonstrate the type of change he's bringing. So, Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. There's this idea that, oh, we're gonna put aside the old and the new is gonna absorb everything. Wrong. If anything, the new is here to actually confirm that the old was really good, really had the right mindset, and thus marry it with a new particular way of how we express these ancient themes. And I love that about Jesus. I love that because famously, like, people famously know him for, having a bit of disagreement with those in charge. Like, oh, Jesus really was against the rulers, but they never question why. They only know about the phrase, the framing of it, without even going into actually his critique of them. And so one of my favorite verses that kind of demonstrates this is Matthew 23 verses 1-3. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Obviously, they have the scriptures, they have the law, they judge, right? Verse 3. So do and observe whatever they tell you. Very controversial, first and foremost. Just do whatever they tell you to do. It's essentially Jesus validating that, yes, what they speak from is right. But he ends with this, but not the works they do, for they preach but do not practice. And so there's this idea where it's like, okay, his critique is not that they're wrong. His critique is that they just absolutely abuse their position to kind of get away with murder. And it's like, yo, so you have the authority, they're right to sit in Moses' seat, but they're not right to have all the abuses that they do. Respect the authority, just don't respect the additions to the practice that corrupts the authority, if that makes sense. Famously, Paul has something to say about this as well, because agreeing with Jesus' perspective in Romans chapter 3 verse 31, do we then overthrow the law by faith? So now that we have grace and we have it by faith, are we just gonna toss it out, right? By no means. On the contrary, we uphold the law. So in other words, the faith itself is defined by expressing the spiritually righteous themes that the law communicated, and thus we maintain that. Beautiful how the old is married with the new. And famously, Paul actually, and this is the last verse I believe, Paul actually took this to the most extreme with even his life at stake. You see him in Acts chapter 25, verse 11. This records an exchange between, obviously, the Jews having a problem with Paul's perspective, and him actually putting his life on the line, but holding their feet to the fire, where it's like, wait a minute, if you don't have actually legit legal status to hold me accountable, in the sense that oh, what you're claiming I did not do, you shouldn't have any reason to actually have put me to death, but I actually would agree if you did. And so it's like, wait, Paul, what? You actually would agree with this? And so let's read it, and then we'll close out for the day. If then I am a wrongdoer and have committed anything for which I deserve to die, I do not seek to escape death. Very poignant statement. Like, wait a minute, Paul, you're actually gonna let them kill you? But if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar. And so famously, there is this idea of a separation again of church and state, and obviously Caesar here is representing the state, and they, aka the judges, are obviously representing the church or the religious institution, right? And so the idea is, well, if you can't, if I have not broken crimes against God and thus worthy to be punished with the death penalty, then I appealed. You're basically, it's basically a secular charge against me. Like, oh, you just don't like what I have to say, and thus, like we might as well appeal to the state. And I'm like, that's an interesting way of going about it. Again, you see in these verses there is a constant respect for established authorities, but there is this idea where if those authorities don't work the way they were established, then there is the question of, well, wait a minute, why follow their corruption? Why look bad on the righteousness of their authority? And like, well, why not look at them and preserve the righteousness of those authorities? And of course, obviously, if they're wrong, then they shouldn't overstep boundaries. There's this idea where, yes, the right perspective should be, what became tradition is tradition for a reason, but obviously let's examine the righteousness of those reasons and put aside the corruption. That's the turning of the page. The corruption's finally done, not the whole overturning of what is tradition and what has became established. And so I just want to put that, I just want to put my hat in the ring in a conversation like this, because I feel that that's the tragedy of progressivism. It's that you don't understand, oh, dare I say, you don't seek to understand why tradition became tradition in the first place, to have a valid critique against it, and thus you basically end up beating up a straw man. Like, oh, these rich people are bad because they don't pay taxes. Well, first of all, how do they exist as rich? I mean, famously, like, people got stocks now. Like, people like have a company to their name, but that company obviously pays people and is more so a moving machine of itself, not just a bank account. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a modern example, right? And so it's like, you want to raise their taxes, and it's like, you're taxing a machine, right? It's like the billionaire of Target. You tax him, and suddenly everybody who works at Target basically pretty much got no hours, and the prices just went through the roof to compensate, because yeah, you're not taxing a person, you're taxing a machine. But that's just a small example. Either way, that's all I have for you guys today. Let's try to respect tradition, and obviously, like, question if there is any corruption in it after understanding it first, so that we can then have a valid critique. But with that being said, that's all I have. God bless and stay blessed. See you guys in the next one. Take care.